Welcome to Overthinking Eurovision. I'm Matt Rather. The great German military theorist Karl von Clausewitz famously stated that war is merely politics by other means. And had he lived another 200 years, he probably would have added that Eurovision is also politics by other means, in at least 4 different ways. Number 1, politically charged song lyrics. Now, the rules say you're not allowed to have any political themes in your song, and that gets enforced at least sometimes. In 2009, Georgia selected a song called We Don't Wanna Put In. Keep in mind, this was in the immediate aftermath of the Russo-Georgian War, and the competition that year was actually in Russia. The EBU, understandably, didn't let that fly. But from time to time, a song does manage to address something political in an indirect way. In 2015, Armenia sent a song originally called Don't Deny, which was changed to Face the Shadow. It was very clearly about the Armenian genocide of 1915, although it didn't actually come out and say the G word. Number 2, nationalistic voting. The competition is notorious for bloc voting in which politically allied nations favor each other. From 1997 to 2014, Greece and Cyprus awarded each other the maximum of 12 points whenever they could. Come on, Greece and Cyprus, get a room. If you want to learn about bloc voting in a hands-on way, check out the Eurovision Voting Examiner, a tool built by a friend of the show, Sean Nixon. This visually shows you how countries cluster together during a given time period. As the contest expanded eastward, 6 out of 12 winners from 2001 to 2012 were former communist countries, thanks to all those Eastern Bloc nations propping each other up. The idea that bloc voting was ruining Eurovision was pretty common at the time. There was even a huffy article in the Daily Mail about how the UK might quit the contest entirely. But you know who loved bloc voting? The director of Eurovision, Jürgen Frank. Here's a fascinating quote from 2011. It's long, but it's worth it, guys. To me, the song contest is a battlefield where you can allow yourself to be a patriot. You can even allow yourself to be a nationalist, which is a word you don't want to attach very much to people these days. If we didn't have that battlefield, we might have more battles. It's a little like football was before hooligans started demolishing cities. Football cannot do this job anymore, but the song contest can. This is actually one of the basic things to know about the song contest now, and at the EBU, we are thinking a lot about this. In other words, Jürgen Frank didn't feel like nationalistic voting patterns ruined the purity of the event. Rather, he felt like the music was just a vehicle to allow people a safe way to behave nationalistically, which is pretty wild to hear the director of the show say out loud.
I said the quiet part loud and the loud part quiet. Oh, dear.
Number 3. It's a glitzy showcase for the values of Western liberal democracies. It was in the late 1980s that the term soft power was coined by Joseph Nye, aka Joe Nye, the political science guy, aka the notorious LIB. Hard power is how a nation gets what it wants through force or economic pressure.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Sending in the Marines, Call of Duty style, is classic hard power.
Where's my Mountain Dew?
Soft power is about winning over hearts and minds, getting nations to want the things that you want them to want. And one of the main ways this works is through popular culture. Think about the dominance of American movies and music, even in totalitarian nations that are politically opposed to America. The Captain America movies were huge hits in China. This may not directly accomplish anything besides further enriching Disney, but in a small way, it may help sway a generation of young Chinese moviegoers towards an American worldview. So if Eurovision is a Trojan horse packed full of Western values, what specific values are we talking about? Well, for starters, it's a ritualized celebration of democracy. The telecast ends with a long sequence in which each nation enjoys a moment in the spotlight. Every country gets an equal say, and the results are public and instantly tallied. This might not seem like anything special, but in places where free and fair elections aren't the norm, it can be a powerful display. In 2012, Eurovision was held in autocratic Azerbaijan, and the representative from Germany couldn't help but make that subtext explicit.
tonight nobody could vote for their own country, but it is good to be able to vote, and it is good to have a choice. Good luck on your journey, Azerbaijan.
There's another thing to notice about this voting sequence. The local celebrities usually stand in front of an iconic landmark and say a few words in a native language before announcing the points.
Buenas noches.
Shalom. Dobry wieczór.
Bonsoir, Rotterdam.
Dobry wieczór.
Guten Abend nach Rotterdam.
This leads us to a second core value of Eurovision, celebrating pluralism. Everybody might dress differently and talk differently, but we can all smile and play by the same rules and sing in perfect unison. Wait a second, that's just a real-life version of the It's a Small World ride, right? And that's the Disney-fied world Eurovision presents to us. National identities are just window dressing, and we're all one big happy family.
Bonsoir. Goedenavond. That is good evening in French and Dutch, although I've got absolutely no idea which is which.
Of course, this is also what the Olympics try to accomplish, but we think it's important to note that at the Olympics, cultural diversity is only on display in the opening and closing ceremonies, and then the competition begins. At Eurovision, the culture is front and center, but ultimately we all work together to pick a winner. Finally, Eurovision has been a focal point for LGBTQ culture for decades. Dana International won for Israel way back in 1998. Since then, we've had many fabulous moments which haven't always been appreciated by the world's more repressive regimes. Turkey refused to broadcast the contest in 2013 in response to a planned lesbian kiss. Go Team Ding Dong! China lost the rights to broadcast Eurovision in 2018 when it censored the same-sex dancing in Ireland's song. The message was clear. If you want the huge television ratings of Eurovision, and especially if you want to participate, you need to accept that your people are going to be exposed to this guy. Now, of course, exposing a nation to gay culture doesn't mean they're going to embrace it. When Conchita Wurst won in 2014, she did not get many votes from Eastern Europe. But everyone in Eastern Europe saw her absolutely slay up there. And if you're a believer in soft power, that exposure makes a huge difference. But soft power works both ways, and that brings us to number 4. Eurovision is a chance for nations to sell themselves to the world. There are entire books written about this. If you need some solid beach reading this summer, check out Nation Branding, National Identity, and the Eurovision Song Contest in Estonia. Let's take the example of Azerbaijan in 2011. The winners of their national selection show were Eldar Gasimov and Nigar Jamal. But when they got to Dusseldorf, their names had been Ellis Islanded to El and Nikki. Supposedly, this was done so that Nigar's name wouldn't be mistaken for a racial slur, which, okay, I see why you would do that. But they sang in English with a song written by 2 Swedes and a Brit, and their backing singers were more Swedes. Azerbaijan clearly wanted to present itself as a westernized nation, and it paid off big time for them. A 2016 research paper found Azerbaijan's image improved significantly through the mega event, especially with young, cosmopolitan people. Surprisingly, the country's image significantly improved even among people who did not watch the ESC on TV due to extensive media coverage. But whenever politics and Eurovision are discussed in academic circles, which happens way more often than you might think, the number one case study is Ukraine. In fact, Ukraine's 2016 win was a perfect storm of all 4 types of Eurovision politics working together. Going into that year, Ukraine was fighting off a protracted Russian invasion of the Crimean Peninsula. The Kremlin was pulling out all the propaganda stops to make its aggression seem justified, maybe even noble. According to the journal Foreign Policy, Russian President Vladimir Putin was able to portray Ukrainian leaders as German-style fascists. In the post-Soviet sphere, where the memory of World War II is still a potent political force, this was a savvy, if immoral, move. So how does Ukraine counter this at Eurovision? By telling its own narrative about World War II, one in which the Soviets were not liberators, but invaders.
They kill you all and say we're not guilty.
Jamala's 1944 was about the singer's great-grandmother being deported to Central Asia. It highlighted a distinctly Ukrainian musical style and the Crimean Tatar language. So let's check the scoreboard. Point number 1, politically charged lyrics? Check. Point number 4, timely effort at national branding? Check.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
It might be hard to believe now, but going into May 2016, Jamala was not favored to win. The frontrunner was the Russian singer, Sergei Lazarev. And guys, credit where credit is due, it was a great song, super catchy, and they pulled out all the stops for one of the most trippy performances of all time. But by 2016, the Russian state was already on its way to becoming an international pariah. This was partially due to the whole Ukraine affair, but in Eurovision circles, the anti-Russian vibe was largely driven by Vladimir Putin's crackdown on homosexuality. In 2013, the Russian government passed a law that criminalized propaganda of same-sex relations. On a practical level, you can see why some of the most die-hard Eurovision fans would worry about the competition being hosted in a place where gay pride parades had been banned for 100 years. Literally. But more importantly, tolerance, if not an outright embrace, of LGBTQ people is one of those core values of Eurovision that we talked about.
Moves to curb gay rights in Russia are part of a wider rejection of what the Kremlin and many Russians see as Western liberal values.
And because Russia was seen to be in opposition to the spirit of Eurovision, there was a widespread feeling that anyone but them should be the winners. Lo and behold, there's Jamala with an anti-Russian lightning rod. So what we have in 2016 is points number 1, number 4, and number 3, leading to a whole lot of number 2. Politically motivated voting, leading to a song that wasn't predicted to win, finishing with the most points in history, at least until 1 year later. Now for you Jamala fans out there, I don't want to imply that 1944 wasn't an amazing piece of music. It was. But we do believe that a big chunk of the votes she received were fueled by a combination of sympathy for Ukraine and antipathy towards Russia. People will always complain that Eurovision is too political. But that's like complaining that the ocean is too wet, or that The Kardashians is not actually a documentary. Politics, history, culture, and diplomacy are just as much a part of the contest as the music. And without all that, we wouldn't be nearly so fascinated year after year. We'll see you next time. Ding dong. Ding dong. Honestly, that song always gets stuck in my head, and you know what? I'm not mad at it.